Like it's very clear the economy is struggling here in Alberta, that there are a lot of people who are personally struggling, that tens of thousands of people have been laid off. What do you think is the biggest issue that is facing Alberta right now?
We've gone through the longest period of economic decline and stagnation, at least since the 1930s. Monthly payrolls are down by 10% over 4 years ago, or per capita GDP down 7%. But behind those numbers, a huge number of folks have gone from reliable six-figure incomes to unreliable piecemeal and contract work. A lot of young people leaving the province, and just a sense of also a little bit of sense of being under siege. There's something psychological about it. Albertans are kind of get-her-done people, very much pride themselves on the entrepreneurial spirit that's driven this province, and a sense that we've been good neighbors in the Federation. We've been very generous. We've contributed a couple $100 billion to the rest of the Federation through our federal taxes over the past 2 decades, and yet there seem to be political forces that don't want us to develop the resources that pay the bills. So both economically and politically, a lot of frustration.
Let's talk about pipelines just for a minute. The federal government is now consulting with Indigenous communities. They've had some 60 meetings, and so they're working towards trying to get this thing going. What would you be doing differently in this position if you were Premier? What should the Premier be doing differently?
I think our Premier made a huge mistake when she signaled to Justin Trudeau that he could kill Northern Gateway and surrender to Obama's veto on Keystone XL. And Alberta did nothing to protest the Trudeau Liberals effectively killing Energy East through new regulatory mandates. So we're left with just one, the faint hope of one coastal pipeline. We should not have been in this position. Now, obviously,
I know, but how can a Premier stop the federal government from making what it believes are the best decisions for all kinds of reasons? I mean, I don't know what she could have done.
I think the job of an Alberta Premier is to defend the province's vital economic interests and waving the white flag on 3 out of 4 potential coastal pipelines was not in our best interests. And we backed ourselves into this corner where the pipeline opponents have enormous leverage over us. Obviously, federal government has to do the supplementary consultations, but they should also have appealed that decision to the Supreme Court to get clarity on the duty to consult. And I think they could have laid down the federal supremacy on this issue. Invoke Section 92 of the Constitution. This is an interprovincial pipeline, exclusive federal jurisdiction. The government of British Columbia has no business threatening to block it by withholding permits and litigation and these other things that caused Kinder Morgan to walk away.
Mm-hmm. What do you want Canadians to know about what's happening here? We see people protesting the yellow vests. We don't know, is this a real movement? What does it stand for? We see people protesting against Bill C-69. We see people really struggling to find jobs. There's all sorts of stories.
A lot of frustration.
Yeah, a lot of frustration. So what should the rest of us in central Canada, in other places, eastern Canada, what should we understand about what's happening here and why that should matter to the rest of us so much?
First, let's not be distracted by a small number of yellow vest people who might have extreme views. The vast majority of folks showing up at tens of thousands at rallies and protests are just what Ralph Klein would have called severely normal Albertans who would never go to a protest in their whole lives. They're just working people who feel like they've played by the rules, they paid their taxes, we've been generous in the Federation, and now that we just can't seem to get a break. What those Albertans are saying is we Albertans are proud to have been an engine in the Canadian economy, to have been a great engine of social mobility with the highest levels of employment for people with modest levels of education, highest levels of employment and income for Aboriginal people, sharing $20 billion a year net with the rest of the Federation. We're proud to have played that role and share our prosperity when times are good here and bad elsewhere. But all we ask is that governments and politicians who benefit from the resources developed from the hard work of Albertans allow us to sell those products, displace foreign oil imports from Eastern Canada, get it to global markets, get a fair price. A strong Alberta is essential for a strong Canada. We're talking about trillions of dollars of potential wealth. There's a growing global demand, whether people like it or not, for oil and gas through at least the year 2040, according to the International Energy Agency. Either we will be part of supplying that growing demand, or we're going to leave it to the OPEC dictatorships. I think it's good for the world, and it's great for Canada if we can strengthen this federation by allowing Alberta to sell those assets to the world.